Welcome back, folks. We're back with the Analog Podcast. I'm Chris.
And I'm Anne.
And we have our first guest on the Analog Podcast this week. Anne, do you want to introduce our first guest?
Oh, yeah. I'm so delighted to introduce Mr. Rich Binell, coming to us from Santa Fe, New Mexico. The man, the myth, the legend who helped us land the plane on Analog. And I have been working with Rich for many, many years, and he has been a delight and a challenge and a real superstar in my life. So I was so glad that he was able to come in and help us a little bit with Analog as we wrapped it up.
Welcome, Rich.
I love being here. Hi. It's good to see you too.
Well, you're an important part of this book, and many people by now have it in their mailboxes on their doorstep, and people are actually starting to read it.
They're reading it and liking it.
We had a woman this morning, a friend of ours, who said she's almost finished.
She said she couldn't put it down.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So for that, Rich was tremendously helpful in, like you said, landing the plane. I have been describing it as you helped us find the thread with Analog, and you also wielded the scalpel, the editor's scalpel, using my words in the book. It's still my book. It became good and readable and consumable. So thank you, Rich.
Yeah, it was there. It just needed parts rearranged, and it's I think now a very strong book.
Well, we got there together, and you were a huge part of it. I want to talk a little bit about finding the message of the book, and we'll get into some of the process and your process in a minute here. Last week, the book was going to press, and you said, I just realized what this book is about.
Eureka!
Eureka. And I was like, I hope it's in there because it's going to Amazon right now. Choose Yourself, a message that you sent across, but we have not yet talked about. So let's talk about it. Why is this book about choose yourself?
It's a good corollary idea to the basic idea of Analog. Choosing yourself. Well, the truest thing that I know probably in the world is that the best way to make yourself miserable is to try to make everyone else happy. The idea of choosing yourself, it's not selfish. It means that in order to be happy, you have to make yourself happy, and you have to do what pleases you first, because otherwise you're going to be unhappy. You're going to make the rest of the people around you unhappy because they'll know how unhappy you are. The antidote to all that is to make yourself happy first by choosing yourself. And the other thing that means is it's not by choosing to make your boss happy or your business happy or even your family happy. What I've understood from you is that the key to success is to choose yourself and to make yourself happy. And to put that first. The people around you will never tell you to do this, but people will tell you to keep doing what you're doing.
And we're in service of when we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, what we should be doing, the path that we're raised to feel like we should be on.
Well, I feel like people also want to tell you to keep doing what you're doing because it's hard for us to cheer for someone to be really successful or do their biggest thing. So keep doing what you're doing is also another euphemism for you just stay small. Just keep yourself. Don't have big ambitions. Don't do that. And I do feel like part of the book is really a rallying cry to say, be as big as you possibly want to be because you've got it inside of you.
No, it's not a good thing to be on the hamster wheel. For most people, it's okay to be on the hamster wheel, but this book is not for everyone. It's for the people who really dream about getting off the hamster wheel, and is a lovely description of how you managed to find ways off, find companies to start and people to align yourself with, starting with your father. And I love that you learned a lot from your father about what you wanted and what you didn't want.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that the whole notion of choosing yourself and the hamster wheel, not a critique of being on the hamster wheel. There's a lot of different ways to make a living. We all have to work hard. We all have career paths. And I think one of the things about the hamster wheel that catches up with people is not knowing when to get off. Part of this book is a call to wherever you are in your career, at the beginning of your career, or maybe towards the end of your career, what else is out there versus I got to keep climbing the corporate ladder. We all are around a lot of people who have been very successful in their careers, but might be at a point where they're beginning to wonder what else is out there. Can I afford it? Or how do I do this afterwards?
We just met someone this weekend who was talking about her company closed down recently in the Bay Area. And so she's like, what am I going to do with the next part of my life? And we started to have a conversation. And what was really interesting about it is she was just starting down the path of saying, hey, maybe I don't have to go get another job. She's at an age when it would be considered early retirement, but financially, she thinks she might be okay. Her husband's like, I just want you to be happy. But in her mind, she's like, no, I got to keep moving. I think there's something to be said for either the hamster wheel stops and you have to get off because something major happens, like you lose your job or your company goes out of business. And that allows you to like really rethink it. I think for the most part, people don't think that they should ever get off. And it's like we fuel ourselves for so long thinking you have to be moving forward. And so I think that was kind of fun for us. We were like, oh, you should read Chris's book. And then you should join the hundreds of thousands of people who are getting off the hamster wheel and creating new and amazing lives for themselves the analog way.
Can you make yourself happy by staying where you are, or would you be happier doing something else? Because what you're passionate about can help you uncover the things that you should be doing.
I think that's one of the things. You're probably closer to where you want to be. The thing you want to be doing is probably in and around your life already, things that bring you joy, things that you're passionate about. Those are the things that you want to pursue. That often, people in the startup world are trying to brainstorm and come up with this next billion-dollar idea. That works for some people, but for many of us, building the life that you want might involve doing something new or doing something you're passionate about is probably close within your world right now.
Absolutely. I love how your book helps people along by giving them little bits of wonderful advice along the way, because it's a very encouraging book that shows both the mistakes that you've made and the lessons you've learned. And it calls them out in a very helpful way. And I love that about it.
Well, it was fun to work with you on this. I want to take us back to the beginning of our process. And when you first showed up or last were here in Healdsburg, we had a version of the book at that point. When I set out to write this book, it was during COVID. You'll learn a lot about what was going on in my life at that time. What I was trying to accomplish was I spent thousands of hours meeting one-on-one with entrepreneurs throughout my career. That's what I did at Launchpad. And I no longer could do that. I thought, rather than those thousands of one-on-one meetings, what if I take the best stuff I got and put it into a book and then just say, okay, now we can hand you this book. So, obviously that was sort of where we're aiming, not getting there when you helped us arrive. One of the things I'd like to talk about, because I think sometimes viewers or people are working on things, but they don't quite know what it is. That's where I was. I've got this book, but I don't quite know what it is at this point. And
Rich didn't know what it was either.
Rich, you didn't know what it was, but you helped us find it. That's what's amazing. And I know you've done that over the years in your career with Anne many times, other wonderful people and wonderful companies.
Absolutely.
Let's just talk about your process a little bit as it relates to this book and how a viewer might apply this. But we started with the name and the title, and then we started with the back cover. What's the brand? What's the promise of this book? And that was after a lot of workshopping together to figure out what this book was really about. What are we trying to say here?
Sure, make me a big promise and I'll pay attention. I like that question about what promise does the book make? What do you want for me to get out of this book? I love that it's a lot about getting off the hamster wheel. The good question I think that I asked you is, what are you really passionate about? Where are the hot buttons for you? And it's about solving problems for people. I think that that's a really smart way to look at it. It helped a lot in looking at the book. The solving of problems and the making people's lives better. I love that you've followed in your father's footsteps without intentionally following in your father's footsteps when you did that. The other questions are, can you make money doing what you feel passionate about? Are there people out there making money at it, or do you see an angle for making money? And then how can you be great at it as a business? Can you be the best person at doing whatever it is, even if it's making popcorn? Can you do it in a wonderful way that makes other people pay attention?
And that's the brand promise. That's the promise of this book. I mean, I think when you read that back cover now, if I'm hurrying through an airport and I'm a road warrior and I'm wondering, hey, I've got something I really love doing, but could I do this for a living? Do I have to take a business trip 5 days a week? Those questions you're asking yourself. I think that's what this book is about. You're ready for this book.
One of the things I learned from Steve Jobs and from working at Apple mostly was the L word, and that love is a really central idea to passion. And if there's no passion, sooner or later, you're going to get bored and whatever you're doing is going to go away. Let me tell you a little story. The first person I met who had an iPhone handed it to me and said, I love this thing. And I asked him why, and he told me why, but I said, someone at Apple just got a bonus. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, every time you say the L word about a product, someone at the company that made it got a bonus because you're not alone. And it was one of Steve Jobs' central tenets to make people love the things that Apple made. He wanted people to want to touch them and pick them up and spend time with them and love them. And it's one of the secrets to success. They don't teach you that much in business school, I don't think. But I learned it from the business school of Apple. And as far as I can tell, it's very true.
One of your lessons from Apple that was super valuable and was like the first, I like to call it the first schooling of Rich. And I've seen your work multiple times, so I know what to expect. But, not Chris. This was Chris's first foray into the Rich Binell approach.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that we worked on first was actually the back cover. And I think one of the principles that we hear from Apple, and I think is a lesson for any brand at all, right? Which is there's two things. Who you are is absolutely what matters, right? And
Absolutely.
the promise that you make needs to be the promise that you deliver. And so this promise on the back of the book was like a very rigorous approach with you to get these words to not only be compelling, but to also be true. And so, like, I think that was a really important part of the process, because what it did was it changed our approach to the whole book, because it allowed us to have a character that we had made a promise to, and then everything else fell down from there. And now we had to deliver on that promise. And so, I mean, I think if we read the back cover again today and read the book, I think we achieved that goal of promise made, promise delivered.
Make me love this book. Make me love my life more. I think that's also in there. You're going to
I
love
think
your
that's,
life more if
I
you
mean,
follow
that's,
Chris's directions in this book.
Also, in the spirit of funny things Rich said through the process, was when he was like, I mean, did you do anything right? And it's in those lessons that, like, there's a lot of, I think he gave you the ability and the confidence to be like, okay, it could be like a bunch of funny lessons that anybody can learn from.
Right. Start a company that did bachelor parties is a hilarious way to begin, except Chris had a serious business running bachelor parties with nightclubs and shady characters and all that stuff. And
I
brides and
think what,
grooms, and it's just, it's quite a dizzy ride, this book, but I love it.
it's a fun ride. I think one of the things that really resonated with me that you wrote was in the introduction, where you said, "Fear not, I will not show you the way. I will show you the many ways I have tried, many of which were failures, and the lessons that I learned from those failures." And that's the most true statement. That's the brand promise. I've read many business books, lots of people, have written entrepreneurship books. Sometimes they're, wow, look at me, look how smart I am, look how many great things I did to get to this point, right? And that can be interesting, but it's also intimidating. And you can learn from that. But I think one of the things I really wanted to demonstrate in this was, in the beginning and through much of this, the messy middle and the path to success, there are many ways to get there, and there are many pitfalls along the way. And I think the thing to do is pick yourself up, keep trying. I characterize it in terms of like at bats, swings. Best hitters in the World Series this weekend are hitting 300 batting average. You got to be in it to win it. If you sit on the sidelines and you just think, okay, well, I'm going to wait. I'm just going to wait till I come up with my really good idea. And then a year from now, somebody does, and you said, but I thought of it first. And then you said, oh, you're missing your shot. And I think the central message that came from losing my dad was, life is short. We don't have that much time in the game. And you really want to be out there taking swings.
One theme of analog being passion. I think another really critical central theme has been about reconnection in analog.
Well, and one of the things that people have emailed me in our Substack and in my email that goes out is, we're living in a troubled world. There's challenging times, and we all pay attention to the politics and where things are in this country. And I think one of the things that the analog counterpoint to the digital world is this feeling of disconnection from nature, from each other,
Sure.
from passion of work, and these disconnections. I'd like to shift gears a little bit and have you talk a little bit about your work with the men's group, and how the healing through that, the healing of disconnection, is something that is so important for us in this country as well right now.
Exactly. I work with a group called the Mankind Project. Going to a men's group is not for people who think their lives are all rosy and happy. Going to a men's group is about people who have concerns about themselves and their lives and their pasts and their presents. one of the first things that they ask you to do is to write down your life's mission. What is your life about? If you died tomorrow, what would you want people to know about you or know that you had? And mine is generosity. I'll be known as a generous person because I've been blessed with a lot of wonderful things in my life. But if you start there, what is your mission in life? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What do you want to be known for? What do you want people to be happy about that you walked into a room? I think that's an important lesson that I've learned from the men's group, from Mankind Project. And I try to bring it to the many facets of my life. It's a very powerful lesson.
You've certainly been very generous with us, both with the book and your work. I remember, I think you encouraged us after you delivered the final version. You said, go read this as if you're in an Airbnb and you just picked up this copy of the book that was on your bedside table and you flipped it open and you started reading it. And we both did that. And I remember I went to Mexico and I was down there working and I read it and I think I texted both of you and I was overjoyed. I said, this is it. You've done it. You've made my book good. I thank you for that, Rich. You did, and it was very generous of you to put your whole self into this and find myself and honor the work that Anne and I put into it over the last few years. It feels great. You know, I knew from that version, we finally had a book on our hands.
Nice.
So thank you.
All we had to do was remove the parts that weren't so good. I love the thought that the book is also about reconnection. I think that so many people are so disconnected, and the internet and social media are making us float off into our own little worlds. And I love that the book is about reconnection too. It makes me happy and want to recommend it to more people. I think it's great.
Well, thank
Get
you for
those
being
numbers up.
yeah, let's hope it works. Thanks for being with us today, Rich. That was wonderful. And we'll look forward to having you back in a future podcast
Good luck
and writing
selling the
another book
book.
together.